So I'm going to be making a video ranking and discussing the Time Lord cards. The only one that we'll be leaving out is Time Maiden because it does not have Time Lord in the name. At the bottom at number 11 it's Cecilia, the Ultimate Time Lord. The reason it's at the bottom is not because it has a bad effect, it's just hard to summon. You have to have 10 monsters in your graveyard, and a lot of times nowadays duels don't last long enough to have 10 monsters in there. Then if you can summon it, you can special summon one level 8 or higher fairy monster on the field and its attack becomes 4,000, but its effects are negated. So even if it has 4,000 attack with no effects, it's easy to destroy. It's not a bad card, but in my opinion it's the worst out of all the Time Lords. At number 10, it's Sadie, the Time Lord. You can special summon it from your hand if you have no monsters on the field. If your life points are lower than 4,000, they become 4,000. I put it all the way at 10 just because there's not really many instances where you would be able to make use out of its effect. At number 9, I put Kami, the Time Lord. Same thing, if you have no monsters on the field, you can special summon it from your hand. If it battles, you pick one card your opponent controls, shuffle it back into their deck, then inflict 500 damage to the life points. I just put it so low just because all it can affect is one card and can only deal 500. I put Lazy, the Time Lord, at number 8. What can be bad about that is after it attacks, it shuffles all the cards in your opponent's graveyard back to their hand, and when they draw they do take 1,000 damage, but you're also giving them back all their cards. So in a way it can mess things up for you as well, so that's why I put it towards the bottom. I put Gabriel, the Time Lord, at number 7 on the list because it can be an amazing card, but it can also be a bad card at the same time because it is capable of wiping the field in one turn, but then you're giving your opponent back all those cards because they draw as many cards that left the field, so it's kind of a risk. I put Raphy, the Time Lord, at number 6. You special summon it the same way as most of the other ones. If you have no cards in your hand, you can special summon it. At the battle phase, once you attack, all the spell and trap cards your opponent controls goes back into their deck. But what makes this Time Lord unique is if the opponent does manage to send it to the graveyard, which is rare, you do draw one card. I put Halion, the Time Lord, at number 5 just because of how much damage it's possible for it to do. If your life points is lower than your opponent's, then you inflict battle damage equal to the difference. So this card has the potential to do close to 8,000 damage in just one turn. It's just not very often where you get to utilize the effect. That's why it can't be higher. So a lot of times, if you have this in your hand, the only purpose it can serve is just for defensive purposes, since it can't be destroyed or damaged. I put Michi, the Time Lord, at number 4 on the list. Its effect is when it attacks, it halves your opponent's life points. So if they're at 8,000, it'll go down to 4,000. The only thing that holds it back from being a little bit higher on the list is the fact that once you get further in the duel and your opponent gets to be lower and down in the life points, like under 2,000, it doesn't really do a whole lot other than defend you since it can't take any damage. But if you can play Michi early on, then it's a very, very easy way to get your opponent's life points down. I put Sadie, the Time Lord, at number 3. This one is actually a little bit different compared to the other Time Lords. The first thing is it has an attack of 4,000, but it still does not cause damage at battle, even though it has the 4,000 attack points. The other difference is you can only summon it if your opponent has a card on the field. Compared to the other ones, you can summon as long as you have no cards on the field. So what it does is, after the battle phase, it causes 2,000 direct to your opponent. And the reason it is this high is because this is the only one that has the actual ability to attack an opponent's card and destroy it. And number 2 is Mateon, the Time Lord. It's also one of my personal favorite cards. So you special summon it when you have no monsters on your side of the field. When you attack an opponent's monster, it sends all the monsters on their field back to their hand and causes 300 damage for each monster. And that doesn't sound that great just hearing it, but when your opponent has a lot of special summon fusion monsters, XYZs, links, that can be devastating because it'll go to the extra deck and they can't get them back. I had a hard time deciding between this and Mateon, but I had to put Raphy on, the Time Lord, at number 1. You special summon it to your side of the field if you control no monsters. Then you attack a monster. Then whatever that monster attack points is, you do direct damage to your opponent. And I just won so many duels using this card. Like, if an opponent has a 6,000 attack monster and you attack it, it'll do 6,000 damage to them, 0 to you, and the card can't be destroyed by battle. And I didn't rank Time Lord Progenitor Vorpgate because it was a synchro monster and I just felt like it wouldn't fit in. But if I was to rank it, it would be pretty low on the list. It does have the effect to banish monsters, but they all come back the next turn, so there's really not much of a point to it. Plus, it halves the damage your opponent takes. So for going through all the hassle of having to synchro summon it, it's really not worth it. And in my opinion, one of the worst Time Lords.